Alrighty, welcome to the Excitable Soul Podcast, everybody. Here we're interested in all things purpose. We want to know where and how people find meaning and connection in their lives. In every episode, we will be hearing the real life stories of how people have uncovered, understood, and unleashed their own unique sense of purpose. Our hope is that we can all learn from the journeys of our guests so that we can all better find a sense of purpose in our own lives. I'm host James Glover, performance coach and purpose nerd. I'm incredibly excited to be exploring these stories with you. So let's get going, shall we? Today's guest on the Excitable Soul is David Jackson, aka Jacko, a former professional rugby player forced to retire due to a brain injury, who has redefined himself as a performance enhancement and corrective exercise specialist. He helps professional and international athletes and teams improve their physical and mental performance and recovery. Central to his philosophy is his work as a master instructor and mentor with the Oxygen Advantage. This deeply personal and reflective conversation covers everything from evidence-based scientific practice to philosophy on life after death. A truly inspiring human and a gift of a conversation. Enjoy. David Jacko Jackson, welcome to the Excitable Soul Podcast. Listeners should know that we just turned the excitement level up to 25 before we even pressed go. And we're doing our best to try and kind of bring it down to a conversational level so that it doesn't put everybody else off. How are you doing today, my friend?
I am doing very well. All the better for seeing your glorious hair and speaking to you and catching up.
Yeah, it's probably not too much of a secret to say that we did have a good hair chat actually in catching up and kind of compare. I was going to say compared lengths. That's going to start us off in the wrong place, Jacko. Maybe we'll
cut that bit out.
yeah, let's cut that. But yeah, thank you so much for being with us, and I can't wait to kind of get into this conversation. We've created this kind of structure that people who listen to us regularly kind of have got a sense of, talking about where and how people have uncovered a sense of purpose, and then once kind of uncovering it, how have they understood it in context of the different aspects of their life, and then how and where they're using it, like how are they unleashing it, for creating the future. And I've started off asking a slightly different question, just purely for my own curiosity, which is, when that word purpose is kind of laden with connotation, isn't it? And it can also mean lots of different things to different people. So I guess I'm just wondering, from a start point, what does purpose mean to you, Jacko?
It like you said, it's such a fascinating question and concept, and we could probably do the entire podcast just on that and still not even get to the point where I can tell you what mine is, for example. But so I guess to shed some light, it's very interesting that literally in the last couple of weeks I've been really looking into shaping what that is for me with my work. But my work is so deeply rooted in like what I care about and what I'm about, that there's this a little bit of friction, I think, inside of me sometimes, where I'm like, okay, I've got work purpose and then I've got like my life purpose, but they're sort of merged in together. Because I guess I'm lucky in that or very fortunate that what I do for a job doesn't feel like work. It's genuinely one of those things where, you go, I'd do this even if I wasn't being paid. And sometimes that is actually what happens, because I do some work where I don't get paid, but it's this. And I've been doing some work on what is my work, more strictly work purpose. But the notion of, I came across something literally the other day that said, if you know that you're in the absolute sweet spot when you don't really know what you're doing, or don't really feel like you know exactly what you're doing, but you're sort of going somewhere, and if you look back behind you, there seems to be some sort of path that's going, even though you can't realize that that's happening at the time. So when I look at like what I've done for my brain injury, and then how that looked into like breathing, and then all the various different things that have happened through my coaching career and things to put me where I am now, it feels like very, very looking backwards, it looks very clear. Looking forwards, do I know exactly what that is? No, but then that makes me feel like, okay, it's exciting, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Because, and it's
Yeah.
also, I think the other thing I would say to it is that, so I retired from a brain injury from playing professional rugby 2013, so 11 years ago. So if you said to me, oh, Jacko, and at that point you're going like, okay, once I'd recovered and got better, it was like, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? Well, what I do now didn't exist. There was
Yeah.
nobody coaching breathing in professional sport. There was no one coaching, yeah. Whereas, so for me to say, okay, what do you want to, I know you haven't necessarily said like a 10-year goal, but when we're talking about purpose, I think like what you're trying to do with your future, that it would be, history would say to me, it'd be a little bit naive for me to go, okay, in 10 years time, I'm going to be doing X, Y, Z. Because it's like, well, history just shows you that you did that what you're doing didn't even exist. I mean, I don't really feel like breathing is going away, because if that goes away, then we're all dead. So I can only see it's sort of developing further. But to cut straight to the chase and give you my, because I've been doing some work with a
Yeah.
mentor on my purpose in terms of breathing and what I'm doing in professional sport with it, is that I really hope, I don't know if hope is the right word to start your purpose statement, so I'm obviously still working on it, but the notion of sports themselves, like the sport itself and the coaches, to appreciate and understand the importance breathing can have on helping their athletes.
Yeah.
Like that is what I want to do. That is what I feel drawn to doing. And that is what is happening as I push into the thing that I feel in a unique position to be able to do.
Yeah. So let me just pause you there, because there's like a colossal amount of things to kind of unpack in it, to the point where I actually had to grab a pen really quickly.
Sorry.
Because I was like, ooh, that bit. But there are a few things I'm really curious to kind of explore here. One, like the concept of a work purpose and a life purpose, and the intuitive wrestle that you are having about separating that out, because I genuinely have a belief that the source material it comes from one place. How you express it can be slightly different. So the way that I might express my sense of purpose as a parent is going to be different to how I express my sense of purpose in work. But the kind of the source of it comes from the same place. So I'm interested in the tension and the wrestle that you've had with that, because it feels like there's just some intuitive data. So that's one thing. The second thing was then the massive question of like, I finished rugby here, and probably not in the way that I maybe thought I was going to. And then the question that was asked of me is, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? Like, holy like how big a question is that to start to break down and even consider? So, what were the first steps around some of that? And then the third bit, and I can pick these off back with you, but I just wanted to give you a sense of kind of wrestling with what I heard. The third bit was this idea of, when I look back now, I can see an interconnectedness in the steps and the journey that I'm on. But when I look forward, I acknowledge that I don't know what the future can hold, but there is a sense of faith and belief in that it's going to be okay because it's been okay. Like, I don't have to know. I don't have to know, because actually I didn't know before either, and it's been all right.
Yeah, that's oh gosh. I mean, that just, I'll go maybe not in no particular order, but just because you made me say gosh on that last part, that it's really difficult, I find, and I'm sure everyone does. It's very difficult, even when you've had some probably quite, as I would for myself describe, quite powerful experiences of going that have shaped like where you've got to still look at, because when they happen a long time ago, to look at to feel the sort of raw emotion of it, and to go, exactly what you just said is totally true. Like when I look back, it's like, it's very clear that it's okay. But despite all of that, there's still things on a daily basis where I'm like trying to make things happen with this purpose. and sometimes it feels like it goes really smooth and it's easy, and other times it's like, am I freaking bonkers? And is this just, this isn't working? And some people that know the type of work that I'm doing and whatnot, that might listen to be like, oh no, yeah, because they, from the outside, someone only sees really what you either put on your social media or you put out on email and stuff. So, you're sharing like, these are the bits and pieces I'm doing. I don't share what I'm not doing because there's not really anything to share about what you're not doing. So sometimes from the outside, it can be like, oh yeah, you're doing this, you're doing that. And, the comments that I always get from it is like, if anyone speaks, oh, you're very busy, aren't you? Very busy. And I go, well, I don't know, because like yesterday, I just spent 5 hours running up and down Snowdon, like for some training that I'm doing, which wasn't work. I mean, technically, I can put it down in my work category, but it's not. I'm not doing any work. I'm running up and down 5 hours. It basically prep before it and recovery after. It basically took my entire day out. I did one technical hour of work like yesterday. Like, so I'd go like, well, I don't feel that's that busy. Like, I'm not working 9 till 5. But yeah, I travel around and see.
Imagine somebody who's having like a 70-hour week and you worked 1 hour yesterday, and the external expectation is, wow, you're really busy. You're like, okay,
So
don't tell anybody then.
But like, I do a reasonable, depending on what's going on, like travel to see athletes and stuff, because there's not many of them, or none of them actually live in North Wales where I live. So yeah, that being able to look back and take some comfort in what history shows and going like, it is going to be okay, is quite difficult to put into action at times. And I think that's where having some tools like the breathing to, like, when if we're feeling a bit worried about the future and we're feeling a bit lost, or we're feeling a bit like, I don't know where this is going and I don't know if this is the right path or this is working for me, having the option to look back and go, well, is there something making sense? As well as actually just having some simple breathing techniques to calm the nervous system, to calm the mind, to enable maybe at that point to then look back with some sort of clarity, rather than just feeling a bit worried and anxious and beat up about these things. Because I've got all sorts of things. Literally, I haven't done this for a while. I've got a broken eye socket that's displaced, that I had a triple fracture of my like jaw, cheek, and eye socket. That's apparently a triangle of, when you get a big impact on the side of the face, it's very common for it to fracture in these 3 places.
Okay.
And I was, it was part of a series of brain injuries that I had leading up to when I had to retire. But I was supposed to have an operation, to have a plate put in once they'd reset it. But I didn't. And I was a little bit disappointed, because I was looking forward to walking through the airport and setting off the scanners and being like, oh, actually, that's because I got a plate in my face.
I'm freaking Wolverine. Yeah.
Yeah. For like, literally, I was literally disappointed. But then I think it was 2 or 3 years later, I'd had like a seizure on the training field and a bleed. So then I had to go for an MRI scan. And I remember getting this letter that said, blah, blah, blah. Basically, you have to sign your life away. And then, but one of the things was highlighted that if you have any metal in your head, you're not allowed to have this MRI scan. And I of needed this MRI scan to prove what was going on, etc., etc. And I remember thinking, wow, like 3 years ago, I went in for the operation. The surgeon showed me the metal. This is what we're going to put in your face. This is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
When I come round from being under general, he goes, oh, well, when I pulled your face out and put it in place, it was all sound. I mean, he sort of gesticulated like he was basically punching me in the face to check that it was solid whilst I was out. And he said, so it was rock solid, so I didn't need to put the plate in, so we just left it, like, just by chance, and some people could think whatever they want to think about that. But for me, it was like, this was a huge thing. And then there's, there's lots of other things that go along that place. So there is you've just reminded me of a little physical reminder that I sometimes do, is I've still, the eye socket is displaced. So I feel underneath here and there's the bone sticking out. And it's like, that's a little physical reminder for me of like, even when it feels like it can't get any worse, it's actually all right. You don't know what is at play behind the scenes, so just
Yeah.
relax.
Yeah, and I totally hear you with people would and could describe that in a whole bunch of different ways. And I think playfully but really seriously, I just go, the universe, man, the universe just, it knows better. And sometimes you just have to trust that while in the moment it doesn't feel what you want, you may actually be getting exactly what you need. And, what would have been the cost or the consequence of not being able to have that MRI in that moment? And in at the same time, in the moment of wanting the plate in your face, could you have ever predicted that that might be the thing
Exactly.
that's like, you can't begin to comprehend all of that information and make sense of it in a way that could be useful. So there's just this part of, what do I need to let go of here and just trust in?
Yeah, and even the brain injury I had in 2013, it was, one of the hardest things I've had to deal with physically, emotionally, for all sorts of different reasons, and just the physical symptoms that lasted for a very long time. Not that it was not that I necessarily. I don't know. I don't know necessarily what I believe into it, but that it wasn't. It was a bad thing, right? And
Yeah,
there was lots of bad things around it. But what's come out of it, I wouldn't be. I wouldn't have looked at brain health in a way that led me to look at breathing, and I wouldn't be
yeah,
doing the work that I'm doing now, which feels like I'm in. It feels like everything that I've done, from like a scientific, like engineering degree, to a teaching degree, to
yeah,
coaching, to strength and conditioning coach, to then there's just funneled down to this, like, I know how to understand scientific literature. I know how to educate. I know how to coach. I know what it's like to have been a professional athlete. I know what it's like to have had a brain. All these things just go into this place of going, like, it's like this job has been created for me, despite the way to get there has been pretty rough at times, let's say.
yeah. And so maybe just let's stay with a little bit of the kind of the steps in that, Jacko, in that, um, if we just hold this kind of premise, hold this philosophy, hold this perspective, just even in this conversation for a moment, of when you look forward, who knows,
Yeah,
right? Who knows? But there's something in being able to look back and learn, but also put yourself in the moments where decisions needed to be made. Or let's just say there were choices, right? There were choices. What was it that was influencing the choices in those moments? So, engineering or not, teaching or not, S&C coaching, not breathing. What were some of the key things that were helping you make the choices to take the path that you took at those key inflection points? You pick which one might
yeah.
be. You know,
Well, there's probably just is there's only one thing really, and it goes back. It links into one of your other points that you were wanting to come back to as well. Anyway, which is nice to link them together. In that, um, there's a bit around having a sporting career that is quite a blessing in disguise, or just like a. If you have a, most people's career starts at wherever, post school or other educator, and then you like go looking for retirement, if which is then however soon you can try to make or whatever. Um, Whereas with sport, unless it's something like golf or snooker, chances are in and around early 30s, you're going to retire, typically,
yeah,
just on average. And so a lot of us struggle with that period, regardless of whether it's by choice or whether it's through injuries. It's a difficult period. And there's a lot of our identity being wrapped up in what we do, which is one of the reasons why it
yeah,
makes it difficult. Um, and I guess something, as I'm getting older and having some of these experiences, is going like, well, like, even if I've not thought about it this way around before, but this is what you're drawing out of the conversation. At the time, it doesn't feel like it's particularly good or helpful, and I don't know why this is happening or where this is going. We've all had those types of experiences. Um, but the more times that happens, and then you're able to look back, and it might be 1 week, it might be 1 month, it might be 10 years. then you actually go, oh, that makes sense now as to why we've gone, why this has happened and why we've gone this way. Or at least be able to look at something with a little bit more under a positive light. And one of the things about having this period, which could be sort of midlife crisis type of age-ish type of thing, is a reevaluation of like, okay, that chapter's done. You're not going to do that anymore. What do you want to do now? One of the things about playing rugby is the very tiniest percentage of rugby players will earn enough money so they don't need to worry about money. So you're actually going to have a proper career for your next 30 odd years or whatever it's going to be. So you have to think about it. And it's a definite stop. And I think it's something that I'm very grateful for, is that I had a proper stop, like a hard stop. And it's like, you are going to have to reevaluate and look at what are you going to do. And without the added pressure of, I wasn't able to do anything, so I didn't have a job. If you were 40 years old listening to this podcast and you want to change careers and you've got a mortgage and a family and you've got a 70-hour week, when are you going to find the time to reflect and go, actually, I don't know that I want to do this. I want to do something else. Like, life is too busy to allow that to happen. So I feel very fortunate the way this happened. It forced it to happen, and it forced and gave me the space to go, you know what do you want to do? And I literally made some lists of like, what do I want to do? Like, what's important in terms of what I do and what's not important. And the thing that I boil it down to, which comes the essence of your question, is I want to and enjoy and like and feel fulfillment in, very simply, helping people. Which sounds super cheesy and corny, but I can't get away. That was what I wrote at the top of my list. Like, what do you want to do next? It was like helping people, and then there was like, I also don't want to let all of what I've learned through sport go to waste. So it's like I wanted to do something within sport, and then blah blah blah, and this is where I then went down into strength and conditioning. And I still work as a strength and conditioning coach now, but it's actually, I just work on breathing. And depending on the person, I can present it as, if they want to work on breathing, great, let's talk about breathing. If they think breathing's a bit weird, let's talk S&C, but I'm going to make you hold your breath whilst you do your conditioning sessions, and then you're going to want to learn about breathing. So you package it up in different ways. But it's and that's one of the things I love about the breathing part is everyone has the potential to benefit from that. You could help anybody. Whereas if I'm coaching calisthenics, or if I'm coaching S&C, if I'm doing this, that, the other, there's only a certain demographic of people that are going to benefit from that. Whereas breathing's for everybody, which is it's really cool. I find it quite exciting to be like, this is quite cool that like the thing that I'm trying to help people with or work out for myself and all this, that, the other, anybody potentially could benefit from this.
Yeah, and you know what I really love about that, Jacko, is you kind of were able to make the comparison and talk about feeling really grateful for having been put in a position where you needed to consider this, and acknowledging that there are probably people out there who feel a desire, a pull, a need to be able to kind of think about some of this, but actually the space to do so feels really constricted.
Yeah.
And actually you talked about two things. I was forced to confront it, like I couldn't not see it, but also I didn't have anything else to do. So there was space to be able to go after that. And actually I think there's power in that alone for everybody, which is what might need to be the forcing function here. What is the call to action around some of this? What are you currently allowing to happen for yourself that actually doesn't need to happen if you just, when now's the moment, now is the time.
Well,
what does that look like?
Yeah, I think that there's something I could probably, I'm quite passionate about this because I feel like it, I say I've had that experience of going, I had a brain injury that stopped everything. And then there was a reassessment and go like, okay, what are we going to do now? Whereas, and I can, from my experience, like nobody listening to this wants to have a brain injury like that. Is not a good idea. So we're not wishing that something bad like this is happening so it can help you. But there is probably to stop, if you can, and ask yourself the question, is what I'm doing actually something I have chosen to do? And I don't mean you applied for the job that you're currently doing. I know you applied for it, but have you actually chosen to do it? Or was it just what you happened to be good at school, and then the teachers encouraged you and you liked having that encouragement, and then your mum and dad or whoever you was trying to earn respect from, blah, 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 basically led you down this path that just sort of happened, as opposed to you going, this is what I want to do. And then asking those questions of like, what I am doing, like, does it bring me like life? Do I hate getting up in the morning? Am I getting up in the morning like feeling like I'm making a difference, or feeling like I'm learning a bit more about myself, or whatever it is? But just there being something about that. I guess if you're the type of person listening to this podcast, you're going to be engaging in this type of stuff. But I think it's very, 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 very easy in our current sort of culture, climate, and education that we happen to fall into what it is that we're doing. And it's not saying it's a bad thing or anything, but like, have you chosen it? Is it a choice? And if you don't feel like you have time to stop and sort of ask these questions, I'm sort of suggesting to you, well, the flip side is something really fucking horrible happens to you, which isn't not, and like, we don't want that for people. Like, it doesn't have to be so painful as it has been for a lot of us.
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate. Like, well, I still don't know. Like, I may get early onset of dementia in the next 5-10 years, and so it's there's all I guess I'm just saying there's the opportunity whenever you want, actually, to just ask yourself some of those questions.
Well, I think the magic here, Jacko, for me is firstly what a wonderful question. Have you chosen this life? Just sit with that.
Yeah.
And whatever shows up is going to be useful to you. Yes, because, no, because, or somewhere in between because.
Yeah.
And that's useful in its own right. Then there is the kind of the understanding of that answer, which is, did I do this because I was trying to meet external expectation or gain some kind of validation? Did I make this because it came from a place of internal understanding? You talked about in that space and asking yourself what could happen or what life could be. You went, well, actually, what is important to me? What do I care about? What are the things that would bring a level of satisfaction or fulfillment to me? And you saying about I wanted to help people. Well, there is a part of me where that doesn't sound cheesy. The thing for me is that to some degree we're kind of hardwired to want to help people, because there is a kind of a physiological need to be part of society. But there was a granular bit of detail there that was really important, which is I want to help people, but I also want to utilize all the knowledge and experience that I've gained in the journey that I've been on so far. So automatically you're creating this wonderful set of criteria to help shape what's next. And it all came from a place of just pausing and kind of sitting in, what do I know about myself? What do I care about? Which is something we can all do, right?
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that kind of really landed with me, not only was that question brilliant, but also why the provocation of why wait? Like, why wait for something really severe to happen and then go, oh, right, shit, I need to change.
Yeah.
Here.
Or nothing happens and you get to your deathbed and you like go, oh shit, life just happened to me.
Yeah.
I think that's something that really impacted me a lot, was watching my father die. And as you can imagine, like, but seeing, so he had cancer and there wasn't a lot they could do, and it was a sort of classic case where it goes quite quickly towards the end. And there was, and I guess since then also, or during that process, I was helping my mum look after him at home for like the last 4 weeks. And I guess I was engaging in for some comfort, and afterwards engaging and looking at a lot of people that were writing about or doing work with people in the latter stages of their life, because it's such a powerful time. It's such a sad time, but it's seeing what is then important to you, or for me, looking at my dad and going like, so what, like seeing what was important, and that for me is I get all the things that happen to us in our life shape like the way we're thinking and stuff, but from that experience has definitely made me look at life differently in terms of like, and I'm sure it's like an age thing as well. You just get to appreciate it a little bit more as you get older. But it's like there is an end to what is going on here right now. Like there is an end to that. It's not in our society. We don't talk about it. I'm again like I guess it brings something up in me, because I don't feel like my dad was prepared. I don't feel like I don't feel like he was given the preparation of like, this is happening. You are dying. No one dared say to him, you are dying.
Yeah.
And it doesn't serve us in any way to be, we don't talk about it when there's the dead body in our culture is in a coffin. We don't want to see it. And we pretend and we live life like we're not going to die. It's absolutely bonkers. And yeah, I think that has had a profound effect on me, but at the same time, it's so easy just to slip back out of that into the like, got to get my to-do list done, and getting stressed about this, that, the other. That doesn't matter. It's always still difficult though. I find to live with some of these things a little bit at the forefront, like wake up in the morning and go like, you're going to die today, Jacko. And it might actually, what if it's today? You don't even know if it's today. And that's not a morbid thing. It's like a reality thing. And actually going like, so what are you going to do? Or remember when you had your brain injury, how you thought you'd never be able to stay awake long enough to have a job and to be able to have a family or a like, that was a real concern for me and my wife. It's like, I'm literally not going to be able to work. And like waking up in the morning going like, isn't it freaking amazing that I'm able to like do stuff now? Like that is very, very rare that is how I wake up, even though it could be at the forefront of the mind, because it's so easy to just go back. But I think having ways, I love writing stuff down. I've got like whiteboards everywhere, stuff. Having ways to remind yourself of some of those things that like strike a chord with you and like go, no, this is what you sort of believe in, or this is a little bit of you might not know where you're going forward, but the signs from the past are sort of at least showing a direction that you don't know where it is, but like the angle is like, maybe it's over there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And I'm wondering, what are the things, Jacko, do you think that help people reconnect with or re-find that sense of perspective? Because, I'm sat here listening to you talk about being able to reflect on the experience of seeing your dad die and the impact that that's had on you, in just being able to acknowledge this is finite, it's not infinite, and like embrace that, but also acknowledging the humanity of, well, I'm not going to live every day like that, because I'm normal, and some days I've just got to do some washing, and
we've got to do the normal thing. I found that quite hard at first. It was like you're going like, well, this you've got to do like the normal things at the same time as try, and that's the paradox, isn't it? Of like, you got to do the normal things to just, there's certain things you got to do, like to just get by, but then at the same time we're trying to make the most of what we've got. But if making the most of what I've got means that actually, right, if this was the last day, I'm sorry, I wouldn't do a podcast. I'd go off and do so. Do you know what I mean? But then you're never going to then do any of the things that you need to do. So it's
What do you mean you wouldn't be here having a conversation with us?
Maybe
If it was your last
it would.
day? I
Maybe
mean, come on.
but I'd probably say some other stuff. I'd probably say, I'm sorry for all the bad things that I'd done.
Okay, the Excitable Soul has now become a confession podcast. More people may listen, Jacko.
Yeah,
but yeah, let's just put it into the realms of kind of supporting people out there. What are some of the ways, do you think, of being able to hold that tension, being able to maintain the paradox of normal stuff and acknowledging the kind of finite nature of the world? How do we revisit, come back to the perspective of, I got to remember that, I don't know what happens tomorrow.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not necessarily. Well, not necessarily. I'm definitely not an expert in any of this. I struggle and battle with this like everybody. But I think probably things that when I'm able to have a little bit of perspective in it is trying to have some of those reminders somewhere that allow you to look back. I mean, I like to go for almost go so ridiculous that you can't argue with it. So, and there will still be some people who argue with this one, but this is my slightly ridiculous one. Say, looking back in history, you look far enough back, you go well, and this is one of my arguments a little bit when we if we think, like I said, if you think, I know I'm doing this, you're like, well, you don't really know because, history shows and one being we used to think the world was flat. And when people said that the world wasn't flat, we reckon it's curved and it's round, blah, blah, blah. And then everyone went, idiot. And any time anyone had a big paradigm shift in what we believed and think, they thought they were ridiculous. In Norman Doidge's book, The Brain That Changes Itself, talks about the first doctors and neuroscientists that were presenting, I think it was only the 80s or something, the concept of neuroplasticity, which now everyone's like, oh yeah, neuroplasticity. But the first guys that were talking about this were ridiculed of stupid, ridiculous. This is ridiculous. There's no way that the brain can rewire and things now. And now everyone's like, oh yeah, of course. It's like you're an idiot if you don't. You haven't heard that. You've not heard to this podcast I listened to about neuroscience or whatever. So that notion of, well, because the world is flat one I like, right? Because you go, well, we used to think that. So whatever we currently think now, in the future, I guarantee you that there's things that will go, oh, we had that wrong. And it might not be and the world flat sounds like it's catastrophically wrong. But I tell you what, go stand outside and tell me that the world isn't flat where you are, unless you live in a hill. So it is flat. It's not that it's not wrong. It's just that different perspective of going well, it is flat, but it's also not flat.
Yeah.
And yeah, I quite enjoy. I used to hate reading stuff, and I think you had on the bottom of your email about team dyslexia, or I was never good at English and writing and reading and stuff. But I guess maybe I've got. Yeah, I really enjoy reading now, and I used to hate history. I thought it was boring, whereas now I think history is fascinating, particularly the minds and thoughts of good thinkers past that were they might be 500 years old, but they're talking about stuff and you're makes total sense now, even in our world still. And that hasn't necessarily answered your question, has it? But
answering my question is always secondary.
Yeah, but I think I was the thing I was trying to go towards in answering your question was finding some signposts to remind yourself in history, and probably your own history, that make it quite clear. And maybe not even in your history, just in life history. That's where the world flat one is. For me, the way my brain works is if I can go quite ridiculous with it, it lets me be a little bit more okay, yeah, that's a fair point. It's fine not to know. It's fine not to know everything now, because even if you think you know it now, you ain't going to. So it's fine to not know exactly where you're going, but you might have some signposts in the path.
And actually, part of the work that we do at the Excitable Soul, like step one, when we're trying to help people uncover a sense of purpose, is the time travel element of it. Like, let's go back to go forward. Let's go back. And one of the things that we really encourage people to do, and you're talking to it so eloquently here, is in the journey of just telling stories of the journey to date. There are threads of commonality. There are threads of connection. You can be talking about a story around work 1 minute, or you could be talking about a story of school another minute, or you could be talking about a story of your parents another minute. And there is this kind of just golden thread of connectivity. There is meaning in all of those stories. And actually, the meaning aligns, the meaning connects. And for me, that's the underpinning of purpose. Is meaning is about significance. It's about importance. And to some degree, we can imbue things with meaning, right? So you could argue, if you want to do world is flat, nothing has meaning unless we give it meaning. Nothing. So the more we understand where consciously or unconsciously we've given things meaning, the more we can understand the things that are significant and important. And the more that we're able to invest our time and energy in the things that feel important and significant, the more we feel purposeful, because we're actually influencing the things that we really care about. Like you talking about, well, I want to help people for a whole load of reasons. If we sat and talked about where that comes from and why that's important to you, there'll be a whole bunch of meaning that just sits behind that context of I want to help people. And then going, and I've got a whole bunch of skills and knowledge and experience. The contribution I can make can be quite unique and specific because of how I've gone through that journey up until this point in time. And I put those two things together, meaning, contribution, purpose. I feel a sense of fulfillment. I feel a sense of satisfaction. And actually, that's the thing for me that becomes quite exciting about going into the future is if all of those things have been meaningful in my life up until this point, there's a likelihood that they're going to continue to be meaningful to me in the future. And all I've really got to think about is what's the contribution I'm going to make to them, because the context may shift, the context may change, but there's just some comfort, some confidence in knowing that is stable, even though there's a whole load of things that aren't. And maybe if we can just spend a few minutes, Jacko, just talking about this wrestle between the kind of the personal purpose and the professional purpose, because I think that's something that people out there would be wrestling with. Like, how do I make sense of these different elements of who I am, because I am this one person? So what's this kind of intuitive tension that you've been experiencing?
Well, I did have one very simple practical thing that I'd like to just offer. Like, it's a little bit from the last question, but it'll probably help with a little bit of understanding this as well. Of the simplest thing and probably best thing that we can do is to just stop and be still. So just being still rather than letting just the chaos of the day run away with us. So, and it might be for 5 seconds. You might feel super uncomfortable, like stopping. But we can stop and just be still. It would be great to be able to do that in nature. So like outside, connected. So if you want to get really like barefoot on some ground, but just in nature, very good for the nervous system. And then if you can just slow down by mouth closed, calm your breathing in and out through your nose, just slow it down a bit, that you will create some stillness by calming your breathing to calm your nervous system. Like breathing and nervous system go hand in hand. And that will create a little bit of slowing down, a little bit of stillness that may lead to just no revolutions or anything, but just might just lead to just like just a time out, or it may lead to some space where you get to contemplate or think about some of these things, or meditate on some of these things, or however you want to go and take that. But sometimes it's the hardest thing, and particularly if you have a lot of resistance from stopping and sitting still, that resistance is a sign that it will be very, very good for you.
Yeah, amazing. So there's definitely something about actually the practicality of holding the tension between the everyday and the magic of what might be possible is actually just a bit of stillness. It's actually about being able to sit and breathe.
It's just something
even
practical something practical that we could do, having listened to the podcast.
Nice.
So the struggle,
this is my final question for you, Jacko, which is Like, just describe to us that kind of
That
internal tension between those two, between those what feel like different things potentially.
I'll tell you what it is. It's the tension comes from the labels and the identity.
Yeah.
Of this always have the tension is between seeking the identity, and also I wrote a poem this morning about why I want to be liked. And that's like the label is something that for me it's like I want a label. I wanted to be a rugby player, but then I didn't want the label, and that was that's the thing. And again, our culture conditions this. Like, so when you're younger, you get asked, "What do you want to be when you're older?"
Yeah.
Like, being a policeman doesn't make you I know it's just words, but it does mean something. Like, no, I'm Jacko or Dave or whatever. Like, I don't know. I don't get too weird. I'm not bothered about having I like to have a name. Makes things easy to communicate with people. I'm not weird about name, but the label creates a challenge with identity. And when you then don't do that thing anymore, then we have it's a difficult identity question of like, so actually, who am I? And actually it's really nice to be good at things, right? And it's good for self-esteem, we feel good, and we can do lots of good things with being good at something. But it can also, I have, in my experience, found it's a little bit of a it can be a little bit of a trap that stops you actually understanding yourself, because you're like, whilst I'm quite happy playing rugby back in the day, it's like I'm not thinking about who am I as an individual and what's life as. I'm just liking playing rugby. But then, play badly, get dropped, and then coach doesn't pick me, or you're not going to get a new contract, and it's like my identity is being threatened as like I'm not good at rugby now. And then taking that to I take things far too personally, and I still do to this day. And it's like trying to work on those things, and for me now it's like, I'm teaching breathing. So you're a breath coach. And then it's like it becomes another identity.
Yes.
Whereas I certainly feel like, and so that's the tension, and that's the challenge. But I feel like the more we have sort of deeper conversations with various different people, that the experience of life is like the experience of getting to know yourself and who you are and what you are and why you're here. If you're willing to have that conversation, and there is probably easier, I would say, currently, to not, in our climate, our culture, to not have that question with yourself.
Yeah.
And allow yourself to be so busy that you get to the point where you die, and then you're done. And like, I don't know what happens, but like I seen my dad take his last breath. I am telling you, something happens, or there is something going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's really kind of hitting me square in the heart here, Jacko, the kind of the like almost the rawness of that experience with your father and the power of being in that moment, but also you being able to kind of acknowledge, to be able to see, to be able to separate out. Actually, I crave a label to help me understand my identity, to help other people understand my identity, and to help me feel like I have a certain place in the world. But it's actually entirely the wrong starting point. So, like, second blow away question here is, we ask people all the time, what do you want to be when you're older? Shouldn't the question be, who do you want to be when you're older?
How do you want to be?
Like, how much harder is it to answer that question right now in the way that we live our lives? It's rock hard, isn't it? Because we don't have the vocabulary necessarily to be able to do that. To your point, like if somebody went, "Oh, I want to be a teacher," everybody else was like, "Oh, yes, teacher, cool, got it." But if somebody just said, "I want to be kind,"
I
want to be generous. I want to be gracious. I want to be excited. I want to be playful. I want to be.
Well, it was funny, right? So this will make you laugh. What I did, and it wouldn't have been when I was super young, but maybe like teenager or something. I wanted, and you'll be kind but I wanted. I don't believe that I am, but I wanted to be wise. I was like, I don't know. I obviously looked up to older wise and was like, being wise is like, that'd be pretty cool. Like, to be wise feels like you've understood some stuff. I don't know. Like that was. I remember. I distinctly remember. And so it was funny to me. I didn't say anything at the time, but before we hit record, you were going, "Oh, you used that word," and I was like, "No, like." I'm not old. I know I've got a lot of grey hair, but I'm only 42. So
Man, I love this. Right, so I love this. This is why these conversations and this is why this work just like lights me up in the world, because that is, you have assigned a level of meaning to that, to the concept, to the philosophy, to the principle of being wise, right? So just track it back. Look at you being a teacher and all of the different ways you've been a teacher, like you're giving of information to other people to help them understand some stuff. And what is wisdom? Knowledge and experience combined. That is wisdom. And so are you wise, Jacko? Yeah, you are. And there are tens of thousands of people that are like glued to the stuff that you share that would 100% support all of that. But the thing that's really kind of lighting me up in this moment is, you talking about this wrestle between who you are and what you do. Like, so often we start with, what am I doing? What are the roles that I play? What are the labels that I put on what I'm doing? Like, the real magic of you isn't a purpose around your work. The real magic of you is who you are and how you express that through your work. So this nature of wanting to be wise and what that means, where you are with your breath work is an expression of that. Like, what are the other things? How many other things are there that you've kind of imbued with meaning that are now just part of how you are in the world? That's purpose, man. Like that, you're living it. And that's why you feel the things you feel, which is amazing. God, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Well, and I think that then fits into what I'd come across the other day, where someone was basically saying, like, because that makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable in that, like, you're saying nice things or whatever, but it's like a, like feeling like, oh gosh, I don't. You've said all these things, but I actually don't really. I feel like I'm just starting in life, and I'm just working it out, and that's. I took a lot of comfort in someone saying that basically, yeah, that's that you're in a good spot if you like don't know what you're doing.
and how much does that then drive you forward into the future, because you don't believe you're done, but believe that you have more to do.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make you any less wise. Knowledge and experience and how you share that.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to say from me and from everybody else that listens, like, don't overplay the humility, man. Like, you are living a life with a level of intention and a desire to create a big Jacko shaped hole in the world by just helping people and finding the best way for you to be able to do that. And the number of people that have felt that, experienced that, is amazing. So if nothing else, you have to sit uncomfortably on this podcast and hear me say that out loud, and hold it in your soul for a little bit, because there's truth in it and you know it. But listen, thank you so much for being on the podcast and for just being open to having this type of conversation. Right. It's been brilliant.
As I knew it would be. It was like a therapy session. So thank you very much for your time. Just send me your invoice afterwards for the therapy.
Yeah, it's going to be massive. So,
it's good.
All right. Thanks, Jacko.
Take care, buddy.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to the Excitable Soul podcast. We appreciate your support and would love you to subscribe, rate, review, and recommend if you can. It makes a massive difference. Equally, if you're interested in uncovering, understanding, and unleashing your unique sense of purpose or that of your teams, come and explore our purpose immersion programs at theexcitablesoul.com. We look forward to hearing from you there or being with you on our next episode. Have an incredible day.